Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Behind the Investigation. I want to take a moment to extend my heartfelt thanks to each and every one of you for sticking with me on this journey. Your support means the world to me, and I'm genuinely grateful for your patience as I learn and grow in this new role. I'm working hard to bring you a show that not only informs, but also resonates with you. Today, we're going to be diving into a particular poignant case that I've had the privilege of working on right here in Montana. It's a child custody case. And let me tell you, these situations can be an emotional roller coaster, not just for the clients involved, but for me as well. Each case tells a story, and it's my job to uncover the truth while navigating the sensitive, emotional that accompanies these families. I want to hear from you. If you have questions about private investigation work or specific cases you'd like me to cover, please reach out. I'm eager to know what piques your interest. Would you prefer me to tell more true crime cases, or should I share more of my own case files? Let me know on my social media pages. Your feedback is invaluable, and together we can make this show even better. So, without further ado, let's jump into today's case and explore the challenges of child custody investigations. As always, pour yourself a cup of coffee or your favorite drink, sit back, stay curious, and let's uncover the truth together as we embark on today's episode of Behind the Investigation. Before we dive in today's episode, I want to clarify that for privacy and ethical reasons, all names have been changed and any identifying information from photos or evidence has been removed. My intention is not to put anyone on blast, but rather to shed light on the complexities of these cases and the realities that come with them. It's important to approach these stories with sensitivity and respect for at least some of those involved. Okay, now let's get started. Let's explore what child custody cases entail. At the heart of every custody dispute lies one fundamental principle, and that's what's in the child's best interest. Judges are tasked with making decisions that prioritize the child's well-being. This standard is not just legal formality, it serves as a guiding principle that shapes every decision in custody cases. What are some common reasons for custody disputes? Well, there's a variety of reasons, including divorce, which is one of the most common triggers, relocation, when one parent wishes to move to a different city or state, abuse allegations of domestic violence or child abuse. And then there's substance abuse, concerns about a parent's drug or alcohol use. And in my case, I've covered all of these. Understanding these dynamics is essential for anyone involved in child custody cases, whether you're a parent, an attorney, or a private investigator. The initial consultation sets the tone for the entire investigation. It's essential to create a safe and welcoming environment where clients feel comfortable sharing their concerns. As a private investigator, I make it a point to be empathetic and non-judgmental, allowing clients to express their fears and hopes without reservation. During the initial meetings, a good investigator will ask detailed questions to gather essential background information, including the family dynamics, understanding the relationship between the parent and the child, concerns about the other parent, What specific behavior or indicates have raised alarms for the client? Previous legal action. Have there been prior court cases or protective orders issued? Clients often come in with a range of emotions: fears of losing custody, anxiety of the financial implications of a custody battle, and deep concern for their child's well-being. Reassuring the client that their feelings are valid and normal is essential in this early stage. Then there is when investigators, you have to be able to work with attorneys. Collaboration is key. Attorneys often seek out private investigators for their experience in gathering evidence and providing objective insights. Typically, an attorney will outline the scope of the work, including specific areas of concern and desired outcomes. It's essential to maintain open lines of communication with attorneys. I provide regular updates and share findings promptly to allow them to adjust their legal strategies. For instance, if an attorney is preparing for a hearing on a substance abuse allegation, I may conduct surveillance to document the other parent's behavior during the custody exchanges and or when they have the child at their house. I've worked several cases like this where one parent is accused of drinking, and particular one would leave the children at home while he went to the bar drinking. My findings can help attorneys paint a clear picture of the situation, which can be pivotal in court. Now let's get to the heart of the investigation: gathering evidence. There are various methods a private investigator can use to gather evidence, including surveillance. This involves discreetly observing the other parent's interaction with the children, documenting the behavior that may impact custody decisions. Interviews, speaking with relatives, teachers, child care providers can provide additional context and evidence regarding the child's well-being. And then there's public records. Accessing legal documents, police reports, or school records can unveil crucial information about the parent's background. When conducting surveillance, I focus on being discreet. Using technology such as high-quality cameras, I conduct interactions without drawing attention. It is important to follow all legal guidelines during this process to ensure that any evidence collected is admissible in court. I always advise my clients about the boundaries of what can be legally documented to avoid any potential issues down the line. Child custody cases are not just legal battles, they are emotional journeys. Many clients are grappling with the feelings of grief, anxiety, and fear of their children's future. The stakes are incredibly high. Emotions can run deep. As a private investigator, I often find myself in a position of not only gathering evidence, but also providing emotional support to clients during this tough time. The goal should always be to create the best possible outcome for the child. Ensuring their well-being comes first. Okay, now to one of my bigger child custody cases, straight out of my case files. Several months back, I was contacted by a local attorney who advised me he had a client that was in need of an investigator to look into the mother of the children they have together. The client, let's call him Mark, told me that he suspects his wife that he's separated from and is currently going through a divorce and child custody battle was seeing another man. Now, the client didn't mind that she was seeing another man. What he minded was that the problem is the other man, he believes, was a convicted sex offender. So of course this caught my attention right off the bat. I asked him, how does he know this? Well, Mark said that the sex offender goes to his church and that That's where the wife met the offender. Mark told me that he then Googled the offender, and that's when he saw the sex conviction. But he couldn't see the details, just that the man was convicted of a sex crime and was on probation. Mark said that he went to the head of the church and voiced his concern, and that he believes his wife is dating the sex offender. The church told Mark that is not true, and that the sex offender is not causing any trouble. Mind you, they have not told anyone in the church that this guy is a convicted sex offender, and they made him an usher. Also, the head of the church was well aware that the guy was a sex offender and his status, because he had to sign paperwork saying he would make sure that the offender had no contact with children. Yet, they made him an usher, and they failed to tell anyone in the church. It's mind-boggling. So, of course, Mark did not like that answer, and seeing he was getting nowhere with the church, he wrote an email to the state probation and parole. He received an email back a short time later. In the highlighted part, you can read, it says, "I am ex-probation officer. To answer your question, no, there is no concern for your children, as he," the sex offender, "does not have anything to do with them. He does have rules to follow as a sex offender, and he is following them." Well, as you can imagine, Mark went on to tell me that he has seen the sex offender's vehicle over at his wife's house late at night. He then showed me photos of the vehicle parked in front of the house. Mark was upset and wanted me to investigate the sex offender and find out what the offense he did to become a sex offender. He also wanted me to start surveillance on the wife and the sex offender to see if I could find out one way or the other if she was in a relationship with the sex offender. I did not realize how crazy this case would get. The first thing I did was reach out to the state of Wyoming and have them send me court papers on the sex offender. And wow, it appears this guy likes 5 and 6-year-old children. He even admitted to the police detectives that he gets sexually excited by them. Well, guess what? My client's 2 kids happen to be 5 and 6. He also was not to have any unsupervised visits with children, and he is not to date anyone with children. This guy was so bad that when he was arrested, he was married at the time with a small child of his own. When he bailed out of jail, he beat his wife so bad that he was arrested again and charged with felony assault. So with the violence and the sex offense, his wife divorced him. But sadly, she passed away a short time after of cancer. Her mother now has full custody of the child, and the sex offender and his side of the family can have no contact with the child or the grandmother. Also, on the ex-wife's grave marker, at first was her married name. That has since been sandblasted off, and her maiden name has been put on it. That's how bad this guy is. It is very rare that even the grandparents on the other side of the family can't have contact with the child. I then started with surveillance at the wife's house. We spent several nights watching the house. Now, every now and then the wife would leave the house at night for just a short time, maybe 30 minutes, and then she'd return. Now, I'm down the street and it's dark, so I can't see into the vehicle, and I can't tell if there's anybody with her. And she always pulled into the garage and closed the garage door. And she kept every window closed with curtains so you couldn't see into the house. So after a couple weeks, we started to watch when she went to church. The client stopped going to the church because we hoped that that would make the wife let her guard down. On the third or fourth Sunday of watching the church and also watching the house, when my client happened to have the kids on that particular Sunday, it was odd that every time I would watch the church, that the sex offender and the wife always parked right next to each other. And they would always arrive within moments of each other, conveniently. So, I mean, we knew or we felt that something was going on. So on this particular Sunday that I was watching, I followed the wife when she left the church, and she drove over to a gas station a few blocks away, and she pulled around to the back of the gas station. And within minutes, the sex offender pulled up next to her. She jumps out of her vehicle and gets into his. I then follow them over to Shields parking lot. Now, some of you who watched the video prior to this one will remember that I said Shields parking lot is a hot spot for cheaters to have sex. Well, here you go. They parked and never left the truck, but yet were there in the lot for over an hour. There was a lot of movement in the truck, but they never exited the truck. They stayed there, like I said, for at least an hour or more, and then they finally left. And I followed them to another gas station where they went in and got some drinks. Probably needed some Gatorade after the parking lot romance. It was probably hot in the truck. I then broke off and I went and contacted the client later that night and let him know what I had seen and gathered. We both felt that the sex offender somehow was going over to the wife's house, but we could never catch his vehicle there. I would search the neighborhoods around the house, thinking that maybe he's parking, a block away and walking in. But again, we never saw anyone enter the house when I was there. So the client was good friends with a neighbor next to the wife's house. We obtained permission to put a camera up in a tree looking at the driveway and the sidewalk in front of the house. So in the middle of the night, in the early morning hours, I had to get up and climb this tree and put a camera up. It's part of the job. On the next Saturday night, after the camera was installed in the tree, I set up in a way down the street so that if the wife left again, I could follow her. This time she drove across town to the sex offender's work, which was in the middle of the night and it was closed. There was no reason why he should have still been there. He came out of his work and got into her car. I then followed them back to the wife's house. She pulled into the garage and closed the garage door. I then sat there for a few hours, ended up breaking away after a while, but then in the early morning hours, I woke up and drove over back to the sex offender's work where his vehicle was still parked in the exact same location it was the night before. I then set up surveillance at that location and waited, knowing that it's sooner or later she had to bring him back to his work. Now, it's now Sunday morning. They have church coming up. So about 30 minutes before church, lo and behold, here's the wife's vehicle. She pulls up. They kiss inside the vehicle, say their goodbyes. He exits the car, goes to the back seat, pulls out a overnight bag, and he goes to his vehicle. I then follow them both to the church. And then again, they arrive moments after each other. And again, they park right next to each other. So that explains why that's always happening. And now we finally caught them in the act doing it. So when I went back to take a closer look at the camera I had set up in the tree, well, it appears that when the wife and the sex offender would arrive at the house, he would put a blanket over his head and body so neighbors or anyone else walking by would not see him in the vehicle. But obviously they had no idea we had a camera taking pictures and video looking through the front windshield as she pulled into the driveway. the fact that it's amazing. I'm in awe. The fact that they would take these steps to keep this relationship a secret proves that the wife knew what she was doing was wrong. Now, mind you, she did this. Now, this particular time, she didn't have the kids at the house, but there were other times that she did this and that she brought him over where the kids were at the house. And mind you, she would leave these little kids, 5 and 6 years old, alone in the house when she'd go pick up the sex offender. So at this point in the investigation, we decided we had to take action. So I reached out to probation and parole and made an appointment with them. Remember, they said the sex offender was doing no wrong and that he's following the rules. Well, I made an appointment with the sex offender's PO and her supervisor. I showed them all the evidence that I had gathered. And of course, they were shocked. I then learned that the sex offender counselor that most of the sex offenders are required to go to, well, that counselor had a conversation with the wife on the phone. And she told the wife about the sex offender and his charges and that he is not to be around children or be in a relationship with anyone with children. The wife told the counselor that they were just friends and that she only sees him at church and that he's never had contact with the children. Well, we know that's not true because I actually have photos of him walking from the church down the street with the children to his vehicle and to the wife's vehicle. I was able to show them all the photos of this. I was also able to show them that there was nights where he would go over to one of his friends' house. Now we investigated that friend. That friend is married and he also has small children. And the sex offender would stay the night over there. Now, we don't know what went on in that house. We don't know anything about that. We turned that information over to probation and parole, and I believe they contacted that friend and let him know what, the concerns that they have with the sex offender. We also were able to talk to the probation and parole, and there were times where he had told them he was out of town for work. Well, that wasn't true. I had video and photo evidence of him being in town. And those are the days that he would go spend with the wife and that. My client's wife, by the way. So he's lied to probation and parole, not only about the relationship, but about his whereabouts and when he's supposed to be checking in and where he's supposed to be at all times. So this guy is a bad dude. He cares nothing about the rules. He has not changed as he'd like other people to think that, oh, he's changed, he's doing well, it was a one-time mistake. Well, if that's the case, why is he violating all these rules? It mind boggles me. And the other thing that boggles my mind is that a wife, a mother, we know for a fact that she knows about him being a child sex offender and that she's allowing him to be around her and her kids. It's crazy. So the probation and parole, being the fact that he is charged out of Wyoming and he is allowed to be in Montana, Montana has the right to kick him out of the state. And that's exactly what they decided to do. So they arranged for him to meet with his counselor and they set up a time, and 2 probation officers went over there and they arrested him at his counselor's office. And it was at this counselor's office in front of the counselor and 2 probation officers. He admitted to everything. But of course, he claimed he did not touch the kids, which we'll never really know for sure if that ever happened. But he said he didn't. He was still arrested, though, and booked into the Yellowstone County Detention Facility. The attorney then had an emergency hearing called with the judge to bring the judge up to speed on what is going on with this mother and these children. Because she had not full custody, but she had primary custody. I think my client at the time only got to see his kids 2 days a week. And the wife had the kids for the remainder of the week. So, as a PI, one of my roles is to provide factual, unbiased testimony based on evidence I've gathered. My credibility hinges on my ability to present information clearly and confidently to the courts. When testifying, I focus on using clear and straightforward language. It is essential to avoid jargon and just stick to the facts and to maintain my credibility. I presented video evidence showing that the other parent was involved in reckless activities during visitations which directly impacted the judge's ruling. This case underscores the importance of how a PI's testimony can significantly influence custody decisions. The judge was shocked at what I had found and could not believe that a parent knowingly would put her children in danger. She also was upset on how the parent lied and did everything she could to conceal the relationship, which she knew she was doing was wrong. The order from the judge said the following: "It is truly a blessing that the respondent, which is my client, was able to gather information about the sex offender, hired a private investigator, and take steps to protect the children from the sex offender." It's weird and shows how alarming it is that a judge would put that in an order. She was in awe of all the evidence we gathered. This case is still ongoing. The sex offender is currently in Wyoming and will be going to court soon because the state of Wyoming is now looking to send him to prison until his sentence is complete, because obviously he can't be trusted and he can't follow the rules. Only time will tell what the courts down there will decide to do with him. But for now, he's not welcome in the state of Montana. And until he serves out his time, then he will be free to return. Of course, he would still have to register as a sex offender here in the state. This case cost my client thousands of dollars with just my services alone. And then he had his attorney fees on top of that. But obviously he feels it's well worth it to keep his kids safe. It's just sad that no one would listen to him when he tried to bring it to their attention, and that he had to hire a private investigator to prove it. And also, should be a cautionary note. Just because you're going to a church doesn't mean you and your family are safe. You should make sure that that church is telling you everything they know about the people in that church. I am shocked that the church kept this information away from others. And on top of that, again, they made the guy an usher. So he was having contact with children. It's crazy. Anyways, I want to thank you for joining me today on Behind the Investigation. I hope this episode provided insight into the complex world of child custody cases and the vital role private investigators play. If you found this video meaningful, please share it with others to help spread awareness. And remember to like and subscribe to our social media channels for more content like this. And as always, stay safe, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next video.